Birds lose 24-15. They drop to 8-4. They fucking suck right now. And yeah, it is 2023 all over again. Now, I had the video a couple weeks ago about the big difference between 2023 and 2025, and I still believe that. Essentially, the big difference is this year they have a defensive coordinator and a defense that will keep them in the game, and 2023 they didn't. It all fell apart. But the end result will be the exact same. Even my dog's angry. He's throwing shit. The end result will be that the Philadelphia Eagles will not come close to winning a Super Bowl. Now, they might get in the playoffs at this point, just based on the fact that they've accumulated so many wins, and by accident, they might win another one. But the fact that you have scored 15 points in the last 6 quarters of football, the fact that you were at home against the Bears and you couldn't put anything together, the fact that you came out after halftime, after that offensive performance, which was offensive, and you went 3 and out. Tell me why Nick Sirianni deserves to keep his job. Tell me why Kevin Patullo. Like, no one's clamoring to keep Kevin Patullo. I realize that. But you also need to realize that this is a shit show, and it's happening under Nick Sirianni's watch. This is an undisciplined football team that has absolutely zero direction right now. They have no answers. You have a robot for a quarterback that never seems to get high or low, which is fine until you actually want to see some emotion from him. You have a coach that loves talking shit when things are going great, but when things aren't going great, he has zero answers for it. You have a playbook that is as simplistic as the playbook from NFL Blitz. Hey, A.J. Brown, just do the bomb over and over again. You have a makeshift offensive line that isn't creating nearly the holes they did last year because you let Mekhi Becton walk. This is a travesty from the top down. It is a bad look for Howie Roseman because he did let Mekhi Becton walk. It's a bad look for Howie Roseman because they did allow Kevin Patullo to be elevated instead of going out and getting an established OC. It is a bad look for Nick Sirianni, who once again has his fingerprints all over this offense. You can't tell me different because it looks the exact same as year 1 under Sirianni. It looks the exact same under Brian Johnson. So this is Nick Sirianni's offense that they're running. It looks like dog shit again. There is no urgency. They're down by 2 scores with 5 minutes to go. There was no hurry-up offense. There was a second quarter offense. This team was so ill-prepared for this game, and no one gave a fuck. None of the players seemed to care. It was just like, let's just get out of here. And it looked like that from the first play. I'm kind of shocked, but then again, I shouldn't be. I should be accustomed to what I just witnessed in this football game. I don't know why at this point we as Eagles fans expect them to fix it because, again, we're going to be in week 14. And it feels like it's the same thing every week. Where Nick Sirianni comes out, he says the same bullshit. The players will come out and say, oh, we're close. You're not close to anything. You're close to the offseason is what you're close to. This team has way too much talent to be scoring 15 points at home against the Bears. And look, the Bears are a good football team, and they're now 9-3, okay? They have talent for sure. But this isn't so much about the Bears. This is more about you as a football team. At one point, I think it was like 7 minutes left in the 4th minute. They had 7 first downs. 7. This might have been the best game that Saquon Barkley's played rushing-wise, but you wouldn't know it because they didn't have the ball enough. The defense was cooked towards the end. But even then, you have undisciplined plays like offsides on a punt at home. Again, this is a problem from the top down. Jalen Hurts was extremely inaccurate this game. No question about it. He was horrible. And it annoyed me. Like, it's a stupid complaint, but yeah, it annoyed me. They would show the sidelines, and he's still a robot with zero lack of emotion. Because I'm pissed off. And A.J. Brown's pissed off, and he'll have a bunch of, media around his locker room, and no one's going to question the quarterback of the team who was a detriment to them this particular game. I haven't brought this up before, but if there is one complaint that is a legitimate football complaint that I have about Jalen Hurts, and I don't have many of them because I think Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback, but if there's one football complaint I've had and I've noticed the last couple weeks, I don't know if I've ever seen a quarterback have the lack of awareness when it comes to the first down markers as Jalen Hurts. How many third down calls are there where Jalen Hurts will need 9 yards and he's passing for 4? Where Jalen Hurts will need 19 yards, he's passing for 6? Do you know where the first down marker is? Are you aware of where you need to throw the ball to get the first down? Because it sure doesn't seem like it. No one seems like they're on the same page. This is just a disaster. And yeah, it is. It's 2023 happening all over again. And I'm wondering what happens. Because I'm doing a TikTok live and I've got people being like, can we just get to the offseason? And that's how bad it is, because people just want change and it's not going to happen until the offseason. Kevin Patullo is going nowhere. And why isn't he going anywhere? Well, it's pretty simple. It's because he's an OC. You know, demoting Sean Desai, not firing him, but demoting Sean Desai, which was what they did in 2023, was fine because Nick is not a defensive-minded head coach. That's not going to look bad on him. What is he supposed to do? He doesn't call the defense. Yeah, I'll demote the defensive coordinator. He's not doing well. But demoting the offensive coordinator when you're an offensive-minded head coach, that's going to look bad on your resume. That's going to look bad. That's damning on you, the offensive-minded head coach, even though this is his offense. I mean, it's gotten so bad that I have people on TikTok saying, put in Tanner McKee, as if Tanner McKee would do any better behind this makeshift offensive line. Look, this team has weapons, and they should not be playing this poorly, but the fact that people are clamoring for Tanner McKee, it's gotten to that point. It's gotten that bad. Like, to those people, I think you're just being reactionary. I mean, and I said it, when you really think about it, Tanner McKee behind a right side of Tyler Steen and Fred Johnson, I want no parts of. But there's nothing good you can take away from this game. You've got Jake Elliott missing kicks. You've got Saquon Barkley dropping, the ball. You've got a fumble, which, by the way, I hope all the people that didn't want the tush push, I hope you took notes. I hope that baby shit soft Sean McDermott took notes on how to stop the tush push, because it's pretty simple. It's happened twice now. You literally just ripped the ball out of his hands. And this isn't like me bitching about that. It's just proving a point of all the people that complained. There is a way to stop it, and we saw it. But that's kind of how this game's gone, and it kind of is how the season has gone, where anything that was starting to look good gets derailed pretty quickly. The Eagles score a touchdown. Their offense finally looked okay. They get an interception, and then they proceed the next drive as they're moving the football to fumble it away. And there's just no urgency. It just looks like, and I know that they do care, but it just doesn't look like they do. And we all internalize that stuff differently. I understand that. And I'm being a little reactionary right now, but I would just love to hear at what point does something legitimately change. Because I don't think anything changes for the rest of the season. I think the season's a wash. I think they're cooked completely. I think it's over, done with. Nothing I've seen in the past handful of weeks, actually nothing I've seen since the bye, tells me that what we witnessed today will be different next week. I mean, they've had ample amount of time to fix it. They've had excuses. They've been on the road. They've been at home. And it looks the exact same. It's a stagnant offense that cannot score, that cannot execute, and who's to blame? If you want to blame Kevin Patullo, that's fine. Put the blame on Nick Sirianni as well. Put the blame on Howie Roseman, who allowed him to elevate Kevin Patullo, knowing full damn well that this would probably happen, because how could you not? I figured it would happen. I did a whole video about it before the season. My biggest fear heading into this season, what was it? The fact that Nick Sirianni would meddle and that the offense would look like this. Guess what's happening? I'm not in the room. I don't know if Nick Sirianni's meddling, but I'd be hard-pressed to think he's not. And it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with him, because he's either not meddling and allowing this to happen, or he's meddling and, well, then it's damning. So I will admit that, okay? At this point, there's nothing he can really do to win me over. I think Nick Sirianni's a fucking horrible coach. But yeah, this irks me, because the lack of leadership, the lack of execution, and the excuses that are coming out of NovaCare, it's just like, at what point does it end? And the reality is it won't end until the offseason, which, we'll be in like 6 weeks. All right, now's the part where you got to please subscribe to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this. I don't know why you would. Smash that thumbs down button. Smash thumbs down button just because of the Eagles, of like, just show them you hate by hitting thumbs down. And let me know in the comment section who's to blame, how you feeling, all that good stuff. I'm going to go to Wawa now. As always, go Birds. That old quote from Mike Schmidt about winning in Philadelphia, the pain of it, because you win and then you have to hear it by the next day, that can be true. But in the case of the 2025 Eagles, it is not. And what's funny is when I talk to friends outside of Philly that don't watch the Eagles week in and week out, they're like, what are you talking about? What are you complaining about? Your team's 8-2, now 8-3. Because they just see the record. They don't see what we saw last year, a dynamic offense with weapons all over the place, the ball spread around, and an offense that was dummying teams. They don't see that. They just see a record. They don't see an offensive coordinator who has taken those weapons and basically put a restrictor plate on it. So who's to blame? Now, if you followed this channel enough, you know I am the president of the Sirianni hater club. Like, if Sirianni doesn't have a hater in this world, I have no breath in my lungs. And if you want to argue that Nick Sirianni is a good coach, go argue with a fucking wall, and then go argue with Brian Billick, and then go argue with Doug Peterson, because the defense of, well, he won a Super Bowl is horrible, by the way. He's not a good head coach. But who is to blame for this situation? Because I do think that Nick Sirianni is to blame. I think that Nick Sirianni, being an offensive-minded head coach, having an offense that we're witnessing now, I think that Nick Sirianni coming out at halftime and saying, we need to stop with the penalties, and then they have 8 more of them. Yeah, I think that's on the head coach. I think the head coach consistently showing that he can coach when things are going right. You know, when the offense is clicking, oh, he loves it. But when things aren't going right, he panics like a chicken with its head cut off. Yeah, that's on the head coach. But I don't think all of this is necessarily on the head coach. And I don't think necessarily all of it is on Kevin Patullo. So who is to blame? And I'm going to shock you with the answer. Howie Roseman's to blame. Now, it sounds crazy. Howie Roseman is to blame for the 8-3 Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman is to blame for the 8-3 first place Philadelphia Eagles. But, yeah. I mean, look, the fact is, when you watch the Eagles and you watch the Rams right now, there is a discrepancy in which team is the top team in the NFC. And I understand that the Eagles did, in fact, beat the Rams. But if you remember that game, they lucked out in a lot of ways. You know, they got a miracle block from Jordan Davis. And not only that, they had another block on a field goal attempt. So, all things being equal, if that game were to be replayed, what are the odds the Eagles get 2 more blocks to win that game? Slim and none. So, when I look at this team and I look at the problems of this team, first of all, the fact that you elevated Kevin Patullo to this role, you once again elevated from within, thinking that that was going to work. And in theory, I thought it would work. I think a lot of people thought it would work, but it didn't. He is the second straight OC to be elevated from within and look like he has never watched a game of football. When he was in the building the previous year, when he saw what worked and he's finding a way to not make it work. It's honestly kind of impressive when you think about it. So when the Eagles need an OC because Kellen Moore gets poached by the Saints, the Eagles don't go out and they don't get a proven OC. They go, no, we're good. We'll promote from within. Hasn't worked. And I think at the end of the season when Kevin Patullo is let go, because it'd be hard to defend bringing him back at this point, no matter what happens with the season going forward, whether it be, you know, the odds of him getting a head coaching position are slim and none. But this looks like offensive Sean Desai. So when they let him go, they will go out, I feel like, and get a proven OC, a veteran OC. But when that guy ends up getting poached, I don't want to see them promote from within. That is on Howie Roseman. Like, dude, it might be Nick Sirianni's recommendation that you promote Kevin Patullo, but ultimately you are the GM. And you agreeing that Kevin Patullo can do the job and then witnessing what we're witnessing, when you actually do have offensive minds outside that are on the street right now, that you'd think, could it get worse? Like, and I'm not asking for Kevin Patullo to get fired at this point because he's not getting fired. You know, I mean, I could ask to wake up next to Sidney Sweeney. It's not going to happen. So what's the point of asking for Kevin Patullo to get fired? They're an 8-3 football team, and the defense of keeping him would just annoy the shit out of you. You know, the Eagles, I feel like at this point, are acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is their offense does not look good, yet at the same time, they are kind of like an ostrich with their head in the sand, pretending that it's going to get better, don't worry, it's going to get better, and it's not getting better. They're consistently getting bailed out by their defense, albeit a defensive coordinator, by the way, who has no interest in becoming a head coach, and that's what they need. They need an offensive coordinator like a Vic Fangio who isn't out to get a new head coaching position, because the reality is this team is loaded. They are stacked. And if you get a competent OC in here who knows what the fuck he's doing, then he's going to get poached. And thus, you're right back where you started. I mean, the list of OCs that Jalen Hurts has had to deal with since college is extensive. It's almost as long as the Browns quarterback jersey. But I think he's to blame for that. But I also think he's to blame for another thing. And it might be a little bit of an ego situation with him. But the depth at O-line has cost this offense tremendously. And last season, you didn't really need to see the depth all that much. You saw Fred Johnson here and there when Lane Johnson would exit a game, or I think Jordan Mailata missed some time. But for the most part, that entire O-line was healthy. And then you were in a position where this season you needed backups to step up into starting positions, a la a Tyler Steen. I don't necessarily blame him for that all that much. You spent a third-round pick on the kid. He spent 2 years under Jeff Stoutland. It's either now or never. But when he was put into the games, like, he didn't look good in the rare instance that he came in, but it was like, okay, well, we'll put him in. What annoys me, though, is when you see what Mekhi Becton signed for in San Diego, it was affordable. And they let him go. And they could have kept him, which would have kept Tyler Steen on the bench. Tyler Steen's been healthy this season. That's the only good thing I can say about him. He sucks. He's a disaster. But you've also had to rely on guys like Brett Toth, whereas your offensive line has been banged up legitimately all year long. I brought this up in previous videos. Like, the first week, they had Landon Dickerson coming back from surgery, and then every week since then, either someone's been out or someone's been hobbling out during the game. It's thrust guys like Fred Johnson, who I think is a very good backup, and I like that trade a lot, and I would be scared to think about where this team is if they did not make that trade before the season. But it's thrown guys like him, guys like Brett Toth in the position. We saw a costly penalty from Matt Pryor today. Like, these backups that aren't ready, and they don't have depth. And I think that they don't have the depth, and they might not have had the depth last season because last season they didn't need the depth. And that is on Howie Roseman to not replenish what has, historically been the strength of the team. So I think right now, when you look at who's to blame for this situation, you can look at the relationship between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. The reality is, if things were going well, no one will be talking about it. Every week, the media floods to A.J. Brown's locker room and bothers him and asking the same question. But it's a deeper situation than that. Why does the offense stall out? Well, it's uncreative play calling. It is, let's be real here, at times very predictable play calling. And then it's the fact that their O-line is so banged up and they don't have a ton of depth. So all of that, I feel like, falls on Howie Roseman. I know this is sacrilege to say because you can't say a bad thing about Howie, but when it comes to the offseason, I don't think he did that great of a job in replenishing things. And I think he let some guys go that maybe he shouldn't. Adoree Jackson, every time he's on the field, it smells like burnt toast. And you let him go, or you let Darius Slay go and try to replace him with Adoree Jackson, and you saw in this game, in this collapse against the Cowboys, the depth that's in the secondary was felt. Because when Adoree Jackson leaves, you think it can't get worse, and it did. I mean, I was surprised at how bad Cooper DeJean played on the outside, but in fairness, he didn't practice on the outside, and I don't know if he ever practices on the outside, but he was thrown in there, and Dak Prescott picked him apart. There's one. Then you have Reed Blankenship leave, and Sidney Brown proved to be why he is once again a backup, and a very good special teams player, but a backup nonetheless. So all of that is on Howie. And I know it's tough because you're replenishing in the cap situation, but he is a cap guru, so how much of that argument is really valid, I don't know. This isn't to say that I'm anti-Howie Roseman in any stretch. I'm not, okay? But I think it's also fair to say we can call a spade a spade. The offseason moves haven't been great. When you look at who he let go, when you look at what they replaced them with, and when you look at how it's cost this team this year, it's been felt. Kevin Patullo, I blame Howie. You're not going to fire a head coach after a Super Bowl win. I get that. Doesn't matter how much I think Nick Sirianni sucks. That would be ridiculous. But whether this offense is Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, whatever, there is an issue. You have two offensive minds and an offense that looks stagnant consistently. Something needs to be done. Well, they're not going to fire the guy that won a Super Bowl. They're more likely to fire the OC, but they're also not going to do that until after the season because the team is 8-3 and they're in first place. So we're stuck with these people. But when you look at the who's to blame, yeah, I have to put the buck on Howie. It's a rare miss after miss after miss, and I feel like it's costing them a legitimate chance at repeating the season. I hope they turn it around, but at this point, we're entering week 13. If it doesn't happen at this point, how is it going to? Let me know in the comment section who you think is to blame for this mess. Please subscribe. Subscribing is cool. I would appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thumbs up if you like this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. I am going to go now. On Thursday night, the Philadelphia 76ers defeated the Milwaukee Bucks in overtime. It was a really good win. Tyrese Maxey scored a career high in points, eclipsing the 50 mark. But today I want to talk about another guy, a guy who dropped 21 points in this game, Paul George. I meant to do this last week when it initially popped up on my radar. The tweet went viral, but it's from Mike Meach, who I think writes for the website. I don't know, but here's the tweet. Essentially, he says that he's never seen a max player, a superstar in the city that nobody cares about. He's just forgotten. No one's angry. Nobody cares. But Mike ends the tweet with, "I'd rather have him go away," which is absurd. Like, it's just fucking stupid. with that said, Mike put this tweet out before Paul George made his season debut. But the idea of I'd just rather have him go away. Let's address that. Okay, what do you do then? So Paul George goes away. What do you do? Oh, good, we've got cap space. Go ahead. Tell me, what are you doing with the money? Cool. He signed a 4-year deal. He's in year 2. He played half the games in year 1. He didn't look good. He was battling injury. I don't know. I'm not ready to punt on Paul George yet. I'm not ready to say Paul George is completely cooked. Mind you, too, that in those 41 games played, how many of them were with Joel Embiid? How many of them were with Tyrese Maxey? How many of them were with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? Probably not many. I don't have the numbers on me, but not many. Because last season it was all 3 of them dealing with a myriad of injuries. So the idea of like Paul George just go away, again, who are you replacing him with? Bringing in top talent has been an issue in the city of Philadelphia with basketball and only basketball. The Sixers were able to acquire superstars in the past, and superstars meaning like Jimmy Butler, but they rarely come on the market. And the problem with the NBA is the players have so much power that they can virtually dictate where they go. A situation like Dame Lillard, who wanted to go to, yeah, you guessed it, right? Miami, New York, LA. Him getting traded to the Milwaukee Bucks is kind of thought of as like an outlier. It rarely happens because usually what happens is step 1, player demands a trade. Step 2, he gives the teams where he wants to go. Step 3, the team gives in and they get a dog shit return because they don't have much leverage because the player is just going to sit at home and hold out a la a Ben Simmons situation until he gets his way. And then the threat of a team giving up assets for a player that doesn't want to be there. Well, if they don't want to be there, they're running the risk of having virtually the same thing happen in their building where the player shows up and he just holds out. So the NBA having that issue is real. And the idea that Paul George just go away because of all of 43 games played at this point, when the tweet was put out, it was 41, again, is fucking stupid. But I think the big point of his tweet that nobody cares is accurate. And I think there's a big difference between this max contract and the last max contract that we dealt with in the city. And the big thing is apathy. Apathy has unfortunately set in with this Sixers team. It's not just that fans don't care about Paul George, it's the fans don't care about the team. Fans are at this point at a wait-and-see moment. You have Joel Embiid come back, and when he's played, he's looked really good. Like, he's looked close, at least, to Joel Embiid. But he's on a minutes restriction, and then, the knee flares up, and he's missed the last, 3 or 4 games, again, with a knee issue. So it's like, here we go again. And then you factor in that this team has failed to get out of the second round since 2001, and it doesn't really matter where they're seated. They just kind of find a way to let us down. I just think apathy has set in, not just with this player, but with this team, especially after last year, because fans did buy in. Paul George signs, and it's like, okay, we got a big 3. We got Maxey, Embiid, Paul George. Well, Joel Embiid wasn't right from the playoffs the previous year. He goes into the Olympic training, and then he comes back, and he was cooked. Maxey dealt with injuries, and I said Paul George dealt with injuries. So you had fans buying in, and at this point, they are Charlie Brown, and they're unwilling to run to kick the football because it's been pulled back so many times. And I think that's the thing with this. I don't think it's a Paul George situation. I think it's a Sixers situation. I think a lot of fans are at a wait-and-see moment. The Sixers have been really fun this year. I put out a whole video about it. They've been a really fun team. And Tyrese Maxey dropping 54 points is a prime example of that. I feel like there has been a shift from this team being Joel Embiid's team to Tyrese Maxey's team. And I still think that Joel Embiid is the team's best player, but he still has to play. Tyrese Maxey has been there all the games so far this year. He's been able to weather the storm and wait out for a Paul George to be healthy, which now he is. He's had to wait out a Joel Embiid on a minutes restriction, which he's been able to do. But I think the other thing is, the last guy on a max contract was Tobias Harris. The only thing that you can say that Tobias Harris did was show up. But other than that, the dude was king cardio. He sucked. And I'm quoted as saying many times, I would say it on the air at 97.5, probably said it here, that if Tobias Harris was the only player on the court, he would somehow find a way to be a number 4 with the Philadelphia 76ers. Because anytime you needed Tobias Harris to step up, he failed to do so. And that led us as a fan base to just go like, fuck this dude. I think that might be one of the reasons why Mike ended the tweet with like, I just rather have him go away, because we're now preconditioned to bring in guys, give them max money, and be let down. But Paul George is not Tobias Harris, because he hasn't played as many games. We don't have the sample size that we have with Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris consistently let us down. Tobias Harris consistently did not earn his paycheck. Tobias Harris consistently sucked. I mean, it was amazing. Like, every single year, it was like, all right, this is the game where Tobias Harris steps up. He never did. So I think it's a lot of things with the Paul George situation when this tweet was put out. But I don't think as a fan base we should just sit there and go like, well, that's it. Because that's the reactionary Philadelphia bullshit that you make fun of other fan bases for. And I'm as guilty of it as the next guy at times. I think we all are. Sorry, my knee hit the table there. But I still think like this team is good. I think if you can get them all on the same page, i.e. Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, you add in the role players that this team has, you're going to have a very good contending team. So the idea of like, nobody cares about Paul George, it's not the max thing. It's the whole team angle. But I'm telling you, you really should buy stock in this team. Now, maybe I'm foolish. Maybe I'm the guy who's telling you buy stock in Enron. But what I've seen this year is a team that has been able to weather storms. They are getting healthy, and they play a gritty form of basketball. They're never out of the game. It doesn't matter what the lead is at any point. They'll claw back into it. They did have that collapse in Chicago. Unfortunately, they seem to have a situation where they can't beat the Detroit Pistons no matter what. But they've still shown me a lot of fight where I go like, okay, eventually you're going to have Joel Embiid come back. I don't know what kind of Joel Embiid it is, and I don't know how much the minutes restriction, but you have to keep in mind it is November. And at this point, their goal is get him healthy to the playoffs. You need those guys to gel and mesh and play together. But if the team is winning games with basically Tyrese Maxey and a supporting cast, and then the team's winning games with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George, you're not going to tell me they're going to get worse when Joel Embiid comes back. So I found this tweet interesting because it went viral. A lot of fans agreed with him. Like, yeah, okay, I don't care about Paul George. I'm sure you've seen it. Paul George is cooked. You're being reactionary. You're being ridiculous. Ridiculous thing was like, I'd just rather have him leave because who are you replacing him with? You failed essentially ever since they put the CBA. You failed to attract top talent to Philadelphia. You've tried. He's the first one that was willing to sign in the city. I was trying to make that point earlier, but I got sidetracked. And he only signed a 4-year deal. So it's not like you're bogged down by this contract. It's not like it's prohibiting you from making another move. It's not like you sit there and you go, well, this guy's available, but we can't have him because of Paul George. And the idea that you would trade him, you're selling low on Paul George. That's stupid. I think Paul George has a lot of good basketball left in him. I think he's going to play that in Philadelphia, but I think a lot has to go right for this team, and a lot went wrong last year. So don't judge Paul George or the Sixers for last year's woes, that 41 games that Paul George played, because it was a 41-game disaster. He was navigating a minefield, as was everybody else, and he could never get in rhythm with playing with the quote-unquote other members of the big three, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. But I'm buying stock in him. I think that Paul George is going to be a big asset for this team, and I think he's going to make a lot of people eat his words by the end of the season. Hopefully this doesn't age like milk in the Sahara, a la my prediction that they would finish top 4 in the East last year. That wasn't good. But please subscribe. Subscribing is cool. Hit thumbs down if you like this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you're Mike Meach, I'm sure you're like, fuck this dude. Luckily, I have all of my notifications muted on Twitter because ignorance is bliss. I know the hate's coming in, but I'm just not seeing it. It's great. I just don't feel like arguing with people. That's what it comes down to. Not everything's a conversation. Some things are just statements. And Twitter has like morphed everybody's mind into thinking that everything is a conversation. No. Sometimes it's just a topic. And in this case, nothing against Mike, but I think it was a reactionary tweet. But anyway, hey, go Sixers. Is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat? Should he be on the hot seat with what we're watching? I'm going to look at both sides of the argument. If you followed me on this channel long enough, or if you followed me on other social media platforms, you probably know how I feel about Nick Sirianni. But let's play devil's advocate on both sides of this, because what's going on right now is simply unacceptable. So the Philadelphia Eagles, on the good, are 8-4. Okay, they're still in first place in the division. They still, at least record-wise, are one of the better teams in football. They still have a loaded roster. They bought at the deadline. They traded for Jalen Phillips. They traded for Michael Carter. They are just coming off of a Super Bowl win less than a year ago. Less than a year ago, they dummied the Chiefs in epic fashion, 40-6. Everybody remembers the score, and then obviously you pull your starters. Like, that's how dominant the win was. Those are everything going for the Birds. Going for Nick Sirianni is the fact that he's been to 2 Super Bowls in a short time span. One he lost, one he won. Okay, that's the good. That is what's going for Nick Sirianni. And if you want to include, I guess, the players play for him, okay, fine. That's what's going for Nick Sirianni. Let's look at what's going against Nick Sirianni. And this is my bugaboo with Nick Sirianni. He's an offensive-minded head coach who allegedly doesn't call the plays. Now, I say allegedly because we've seen this before. His first year in Philadelphia, for like the first 6 or 7 weeks, he called the plays. And the offense was a shit show. Like, it was lost. He was in danger of losing the locker room. This is well reported. After the Las Vegas Raiders game, he ended up giving up play calling Shane Steichen. They went on a run. They miraculously made the playoffs. They got beat badly by Tampa Bay in the playoffs, but it was like, hey, who cares? Because we didn't expect to be here anyway. We're playing with house money. The next year, Shane Steichen is once again the OC. They go to the Super Bowl. Now, Shane Steichen gets poached by the Colts. The Eagles promote Brian Johnson from within. Brian Johnson, who you'd think, because he was in the building, would have the playbook, would have the recipe for success. Having worked with Jalen Hurts, you would think he'd have the recipe for success. Apparently, he did not, because the offense sputtered. It stagnated. It looked a lot like what we're watching now. And then after the season, the report comes out from Tim McManus on what exactly went wrong, because you got to remember that team was 10-1 at one point, but much like this team, 10-1, but didn't look right. And that's the thing. Like, Jalen Hurts loves to say, winning is the main thing. Like, when did the main thing not become the main thing? Style points matter. I hate to break it to you. Style points matter. And style points to me are like cracks in the foundation. You know, the style points are there are no cracks. You can have a mansion and it looks great. But when you see termite damage, it's like eventually that's going to fall apart. I feel like that's what we're seeing here. And that's exactly what happened in 2023 with Brian Johnson. But the report comes out from Tim McManus via ESPN.com that while Brian Johnson was calling the plays, Nick Sirianni was meddling a ton. He was overruling Brian Johnson on some key play calls. It was essentially Nick Sirianni's offense, but they collapsed. So then Nick Sirianni has to go hat in hand back to the owner and basically beg for his job and say, okay, I'm never going to do it again. We'll hire an established OC, and you know what? I want to keep my job so badly, I won't even call plays. No, I'm giving up everything. Which then begs the question, like, what do you do here? But either way, 2023 was a disaster because you had Brian Johnson, you had Sean Desai, you had Matt Patricia, and none of it worked out fine. 2024 happens. They hired Vic Fangio. They hire Kellen Moore, and everybody remembers how that ends. Now, luckily, Vic Fangio has no aspirations of being a head coach, but Kellen Moore gets poached by the Saints, and you're right back where you were. Kevin Patullo. Now, before the season started, I did a whole video on the one thing that worried me with this Eagles team heading into this year was the elevation of Kevin Patullo, knowing nothing about Kevin Patullo. But my worry was Nick Sirianni meddled with Brian Johnson, the hire from within. This is before winning a Super Bowl. The idea that he wouldn't meddle again after winning a Super Bowl, I just found hard to believe. And yet here we are, heading into week 14 at this point, and I'm looking at an offense that I feel like I've seen not just once, but twice before. It is Nick Sirianni's offense. That to me is what's going against him. The other thing is the fact that, look, when things are going great, Nick Sirianni's the man, right? He's on the sidelines, he's yelling, he's hooting, he's hollering, he's yelling at fans, he's yelling at refs, he's, motherfucking the other team and all that. But when things aren't going well, he doesn't have a lot of answers. I will remind you that 2 weeks ago, horrible, horrible game. At the half, Nick Sirianni's asked, what do you want to change? They had 6 penalties going into the half. He said, penalties too much. We got to clean it up. They had 8 in the second half. So they're an undisciplined football team. 24 hours ago, I watched them have a false start on a punt. So that's a problem. The game plan, the offensive game plan is a problem. Because it was like 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and against the Bears, they had 7 first downs. 7. They had no answers. Now, to defend, again, because we're going to play devil's advocate here, to defend Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni, a lot of that had to do with just Jalen Hurts having one of the worst games I've ever seen. He just wasn't accurate. And he usually is really accurate. So, I'll give him a little bit of a pass, but he wasn't accurate. He had 2 costly turnovers, and he just didn't look good. So, okay, the 7 first downs, was that play calling or was that play execution? Let you be the judge. Even if this particular game was simply play execution, there have been too many games where it has been play calling. I mean, you look at, and you can easily find this on Twitter, you look at the route tree that A.J. Brown runs now as compared to last year, and it is elementary. It's as if Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni got together and said, you know what was awesome back in my day? Do you remember NFL Blitz? Fuck yeah, I remember NFL Blitz. Bro, pull it up. What if we just had A.J. Brown just do the bomb the entire time? And that's what it really feels like. Now, once again, we're going to play devil's advocate here. Has the offense struggling because of play calling, or are they struggling in large part because the offensive line has been banged up for the majority of the season? And the GM, who I love, don't get me wrong, but he's not averse to making mistakes, made a massive mistake when he let Mekhi Becton walk to Los Angeles, ironically the Eagles' next opponent, replacing him with Tyler Steen, who clearly isn't good. And then they got hit with the injury bug, and they've had kind of this makeshift offensive line, where the offensive line that you would have on paper hasn't been able to gel all season long. Combine that with a lack of offensive line depth, and it's not creating the holes that Saquon Barkley had last year. Not even close. Now, he's had some really good runs. He's had some of the best 3-yard runs I've ever seen, but he's got to feel at times like he's playing behind the New York Giants offensive line that he played behind with years. So, to me, that's going against Nick Sirianni. The accountability thing is also going against Nick Sirianni. Once again, and why wouldn't he be? He's asked about play calling after the loss against the Bears. He says, we're not changing up play calling. Why aren't you changing up play calling? Let me think. Why wouldn't you do it? Maybe it's because you're calling the plays. Yeah. Maybe you don't want to change up play calling because, well, if you change it up, then you might have to admit that you were meddling. But also then if you change it up, you yourself have to take all of it on. And then it's like, what does Kevin Patullo do? Now, I did a TikTok live. I do TikTok lives and I go live on YouTube for every game. And a lot of people were questioning, why won't you make a change? Because you got to remember, in 2023, they had no problem demoting Sean Desai. It's the NFL. You can't fire a guy mid-season. No. I can't do that. No, not a young coach at least, because you don't want to make them look bad. So they said, go fill up the water bottles, and we're going to let Matt Patricia, a seasoned DC, we're going to let him handle the defense. Why was that okay to change the defensive coordinator, but you won't change the OC? And to me, it's really simple. It's because Nick Sirianni is an offensive-minded head coach. He has no problem changing the defense because he doesn't know jack shit about the defense. So yeah, okay, change it up. That's not going to be an indictment on me, Nick Sirianni, if we change the defense coordinator. But if once again I have a elevated OC fail on my watch and I have to admit defeat on that, boy, that's going to look bad. And it does look bad. But you know what looks worse? The offense I'm watching. So yeah, I think you have a situation where Nick Sirianni is once again meddling. And whether it's not Nick Sirianni or it is Nick Sirianni, and I said this in the postgame, he's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't with me, because I look at it like you're either meddling and that's a problem, or you're not getting involved enough and that is a problem. You have to remember, and I think this is the most damning thing, at least for me, when I think about Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni was asked point blank going into the 2024 season, what is it you do here? Because he's not calling the offensive plays, and he's certainly not calling the defensive plays. And he didn't really have an answer. I kind of go into some meetings every once in a while. Okay, so you're a puppet. So you're a puppet for Jeffrey Lurie, who doesn't want to look like his organization is in a dysfunction like the Jets. So he'd rather keep a head coach. Obviously, you'd keep a head coach, because why wouldn't you keep a head coach? You want to keep a head coach and not have to pay 2 coaches, because when you fire one coach, you got to pay 2. So he'd rather keep a head coach as long as you yourself just are the rah-rah guy and just stay out of the lane. Like not even stay in your lane. Stay out of all lanes, because you don't have a lane. And that's what he did, and they won a Super Bowl. I can't stress this enough, and I'm blue in the face. And finally, people are starting to come around to this reality that I've been spouting for well over a year. Nick Sirianni rode coordinators to a Super Bowl win. Nick Sirianni did not win a Super Bowl. Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio and talent won a Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni just had a great seat in the house, and he was drenched in Gatorade at the end. But he didn't win a Super Bowl. Because when you don't call plays, defense, offense, and you can't explain what exactly you do on a day-in, day-out basis, I'm sorry. Like, what? Big Dom could have coached that team. And anybody who argues it is like, LOL, he won a Super Bowl. As if I didn't watch Brian Billick win a Super Bowl. As if I didn't watch John Gruden win a Super Bowl. Fucking Jeff Fisher got to a Super Bowl. And by the way, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. So we're thinking that like that is the litmus test of like winning a Super Bowl, and you can't just luck into one at times. Sorry, you can. You can luck into one when you have Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore calling everything, and you're just sitting there mugging the camera. And that's what Nick Sirianni does. But when you take away Kellen Moore and you still have a stacked offense with a lot of talent, and this is what we see every week, and you, as the head coach, don't know what to do, don't know how to stop it, don't know how to get out of a tailspin, again, for the second time in your tenure, there are issues there that need to be addressed. So yeah, again, is he on the hot seat? Should he be on the hot seat? Look, I'd have no problem if they moved on from him. I understand the view of it is going to be crazy. Like, oh my God, you moved on from Nick Sirianni a year after winning the Super Bowl. But again, I don't view it as he won the Super Bowl. I view it as coordinators won the Super Bowl because he hasn't done anything to stop it. I view Nick Sirianni, and I say this with a lot of experience with this because I was this guy. Believe it or not, I wasn't a good student, okay? I view Nick Sirianni as the guy in the group project who thinks his only duty is to bring vibes. You know this guy in the group project. He's the guy that doesn't really contribute anything except memes and jokes in the group chat. And you know what? That's fine if you've got 2 A students also in that group, because they're going to carry you. And they're going to carry you to a good grade, and they don't really care that you don't give a fuck. They don't really care that you're a dipshit. So they're just going to carry your dead body and deal with the memes and the jokes and the gifs and like the one PowerPoint page that you put together. And they probably recognize the fact that you have nothing to add, so they give you the bare minimum. That's fine being the vibes guy then. But when you only have like one A student, and that one A student doesn't even need the A, he's kind of checked out. It's like he's the guy, he's the Harry Hardo A student where he doesn't need the A, he's going to go get the A, but he's also you got to do your own work. And then you've got a bunch of dipshits around you and a bunch of guys who think their only role is a vibes guy. This is what you get. I say this as the guy that thought he was the vibes guy in every group project. Nick Sirianni thinks he's the vibes guy in the group project. But he has no idea how to actually get a good grade when he's put into the spotlight. And the fact that you have 0 answers for how to get out of this for the second time in your career, you absolutely should be on the hot seat. I've been banging this drum for over a year. Finally, people are taking notice. Winning a Super Bowl does not equate to being a good coach. It just does not. John Gruden won with Tony Dungy's team. And because, what was it, Bill Callahan? Yeah, Bill Callahan literally used the exact same playbook from the previous year, and Barrett Robbins went on a bender in Tijuana. And you look at the rest of his career, and it's been, ugh. Once again, Jeff Fisher is 1 yard away from winning the Super Bowl. I think we all know it. He was Mr. like 7-9 every year. Like Brian Billick. The list goes on. But we are fooled to think that Nick Sirianni is a good head coach. I'm here to tell you, not only should they move on from Kevin Patullo at this point, Nick Sirianni hasn't done anything to keep his job for me. Not one thing. And I'm biased, but I do want to hear your opinion on it in the comment section. Let me know. Because if this continues, and what gives you an idea it won't, by the way? What gives you a thought that what we saw yesterday, and by the way, what we saw the week before and the week before that, because this dates back to the Green Bay game, which was post-bye. So what gives you the idea that it is magically going to turn around? Probably nothing. So if this continues and they get waxed in the first round, would you move on? Let me know. Please subscribe. Subscribing is cool. Hit thumbs up. Smash that thumbs down button if you think I suck for whatever reason and you're LOL, this guy's a clown. He's just trying to... No, I believe wholeheartedly that he fucking sucks. I would drive his Harry Hardo ass to the airport. Because, again, I'm Big Dom. could do what he's doing. If his only job is to create PowerPoints with quotes from the movie Miracle, I think, yeah, Big Dom can do that. Oh, and I'll remind you, in that report that I referenced earlier from Tim McManus, the year that like this happened before 2023, and it kind of like really was jumped out in neon, the 49ers game, if you remember, and Big Dom got kicked out of that, and then he got suspended from the sidelines. Tim reported that Big Dom was kind of in charge of keeping Nick Sirianni in check on the sidelines, and once Big Dom wasn't there, Nick Sirianni was running around like a frat boy yelling at everybody, having no idea what was going on. So that's our leader of men. Yeah, we're fucked. We're absolutely fucked.